Sure. Should I just kick it off or you want to?
Maybe I can just say two words. First of all, welcome and practically Merry Christmas. Great that you still have energy to discuss something business-like before the Christmas. So thank you for joining. My name is Victoria Shear. I'm a co-founder of 12 Brave. It is a program which helps mid to senior professionals, so professionals already with some experience, to start a side business and then potentially transition into self-employment or entrepreneurship. As we know, times are changing, and I think entrepreneurial skills are kind of now the basic skills most of the people should have and start diversifying their income, but also their skills. And Nils is one of mentors in our program. He's our experimentation and personal brand expert, and I'm so happy to have him here also in this webinar to share his perspective on how actually to run zero-euro experiments, and maybe you can take away some points on how to start. This is the plan.
Perfect. That's really awesome. Thanks a lot for this very nice introduction, Victoria. So, of course, like I prepared a few slides, right? Like also some of them we go through in the course, but I really want to have this like as a very, casual thing. So feel free to, interrupt me, ask questions, or we clarify and discuss something. A lot of the things that we are suggesting are like usually like proposals and things like this, right? But a lot of the things are based on experimentation and trying things out, right? So to make like a bit of a presentation out of it or introduction, this is me. I usually show this little slide in the beginning. And the interesting thing about the slide is like this is me in Hong Kong standing in front of the big so-called monster building. And it's so nice because I look into this direction and this is sort of like where my CV or like my short description starts. So I always like this because this looks very cool. I'm the head of product at Zalando for the experimentation platform. So very much involved also at large scale experimentation. I work also as a strategy and product advisor for smaller companies. And I offered a couple of books and courses. I will go into more detail on this. And yeah, I almost finished like my PhD as well. Yeah, that's about me. And like just to give you like a small sort of like summary of like what are sort of like my side hustles or things that I do on the side. So first of all, I published three books. Two of them appeared in Springer. Three courses on Udemy, which two of them are paid, and like I published four papers in total within like the last year, all focused also on experimentation. And as Victoria also nicely said, like personal brand, right? This always sounds so cringe a bit. But yeah, like I invested quite a bit in it because I think it is important no matter what you do, sort of like in your professional life, that you need to some extent an audience to have an outlet for your ideas or for the products that you create. And yeah, my main platform is LinkedIn, and there I also have like almost 9,000 follower, which is of course a vanity metric. But since I created this like in a very clean way, all of these people are mostly focusing on experimentation, right? All right, perfect. So maybe to jump into like the first sort of little block, that is nice to get a bit of into the mood or into the motivation of experimentation and like how to create like an initial business, right? I don't know if you heard about this, but this is like a common way or like a common thing to introduce when we talk about like entrepreneurship or when we talk about like experimentation and trying things out. This is the so-called marshmallow challenge. And what you see there is essentially like the goal or the task that these people have for this challenge is to have like some spaghettis and put like marshmallow and connect them like with marshmallows and try to build like a tower that is as high as possible. And the interesting learning from this is that when this was done and executed with like many different kind of personas and audiences, and the interesting thing is that kindergarten children usually have a way better performance than, for example, MBA students, right? And then the conclusion or the explanation for this is usually then that children or like people with not so much pre-experience are more likely to just try things out, right? So they start doing something without planning or discussing and things like this, right? And MBA students or like business students, they usually talk a lot about how they will do it and like a lot of time, because they also have limited time in this challenge, is used for the discussion and not for the actual doing, right? And the result, as you can see here, is basically that they have like a higher output or achieve better results in this case. There is also another thing that I often like to mention in this context. Experimentation is something that I think since around like 2010, this has been mentioned more and more, that it's just super important for product management in every life cycle of any company. There is a famous book which is called Experimentation Works. This is like written by like a Harvard professor who is actually German, and I had the pleasure to meet him like 1 year ago when I was at in Boston. And one of the quotes in this book is also something that I really like. Failure and invention are inseparable twins. So if you know it's going to work, it's not an experiment. So the key message here for most of the things that we're trying to do in business, in product management, and like sort of in every stage of any company is about trying things out, right? And this is one of the key messages that we want to get across today. So next, I would go into like potential challenges and frameworks already, but I want to open this up a bit if there are already some questions or Victoria, if we should get into something in more detail.
Any questions, guys? Feel free to post them in the chat or ask here.
Mhm.
From my side, I want to say that experimentation in a business, especially in a 0 to 1 business, is like a mandatory step. Like there is no way to avoid it. And basically, building business means making 1,000 of experiments. So that's how it works. That's why I think it's very core topic. Of course, we cannot share all of details in 1 hour, but just want to say that it's really the core of any success, to be honest.
Therefore,
Okay, no questions so far. Let's go to the next one.
perfect. I think the next one is a bit more specific, right? So this is also like one of like the many sort of like case studies and things that we teach in the course and that we discuss in the course. So a usual or like a common scenario that you have is that you want to build a landing page or that you decide to build a landing page as like your central outlet, right? To promote your product, to get some signups, or like to just directly sell something, right? And generally, it's always about like getting people on this landing page and like trying to lead them to somewhere, right? So it's an inflow and an outflow. And there are, of course, like tons of things that you can do to bring people to your landing page, right? What I always quote in this context, or what I always think is very nice to think through or to read through in this context, is this book called Traction, which basically explains that there are in total like 19 main channels of traction that you can use to get initial traffic. So this goes from, of course, you can use, social and display ads and generally performance marketing. You can use email marketing. You can use public relations. All these kind of things are known, right? And they ultimately will help you to get traffic on your site, right? But of course, like how do you decide like what to actually use for your specific case or for your specific product? And I just want to say, like, if you, for example, decide to say you want to use one specific group or like one specific community that you say, hey, I have like, for example, a course around product discovery or product development or product management or something related to startups. There are a lot of opportunities. So, for example, if you just go to any page and look for like directories around, startup and product development, you will find something like this here. And those are different Slack groups. So Slack groups work in a way that you basically just say, this is a group with a certain topic, you register for it, and then you are in this group. And this is a channel with, as you can see here, like 6,000 members, 5,000 members, and so forth, right? And there is nothing that speaks against trying these pages out in order to get people on your landing page, right? Because it's relevant, right? If your product is relevant for this specific group, it makes a lot of sense to actually post this because it provides value for the people in this group. And here we can already go through like some examples, right? Imagine, for example, you go to one of these groups, like in the Slack channel, and you say, well, first of all, I post a message in this channel. And then I want to measure like how many people are going to my landing page. And the first message that you send there on day one is you get only 2% of all the people, that you try to reach. Only 2% go to this landing page. That is, of course, like a first indication, but you can do a lot more, right? So you have posted this message in one channel. Maybe you can start to post the message in multiple channels, and then you maybe increase the sort of conversion rate. But still, as you can see, right, in the end, you already have like an indication, okay, when you bring four people to your landing page, zero are actually converting to your goal, right? So you can develop this further. So you can say, well, I cannot only, post this in like one specific channel. How about like I address directly like some specific user and DM them and say like, hey, I saw that you posted something before. Maybe this is also relevant for you. So here you might get an even higher percentage of users going to the landing page. But as you can see, zero of these people are actually going towards your goal. So you can think about, well, maybe the landing page is not strong enough. So maybe instead of directly converting them to a landing page, maybe you can build in like an onboarding call and saying, hey, you know what? I want to convert them not directly to my landing page, but I'm telling them, well, let's have an onboarding call and try to figure out like what exactly are your issues or what are your problems or how can my product solve your situation, right? And here you also have like some more results already. So for example, here you have 6% of a conversion rate, and then you get them into an onboarding call. Some of them are converted to the landing page, and then maybe some of them go to your actual goal, which might be a sign up, which might be buying your product, or which might be downloading something, right? And on the fifth day, you can basically say, well, you know what, like this kind of thing in between that we have. So this onboarding call is working okay, but of course it also takes a lot of effort, right? So instead of like having an onboarding call, why should you not just include like some sort of form, like for example a type form, where you basically like use the questions that you went through anyway in the onboarding call and basically automate them in some way. And then you say, okay, then less people go to the landing page, but you already learned something, right? So you need something in between the landing page and like the Slack community in order to convert some people. And this could be like, for example, like 1 week where I would say this has not so much effort. This it doesn't involve so much effort to actually do it. And it's also very scalable, right? Because you can start with one channel, right? Or like one Slack community, but you can expand this to even more, right? And this is one of like so many different channels and so many different possibilities to try this out, right? And you already have in this one single super small sub channel of like multiple channels, you have so many ways to differentiate between this already, right? So you basically have the possibility if you DM users, where do you post it? Do you DM users? Do you post it in a channel? Are you, like doing something together with the administrators? Uh, what do you post? Is it a message with a link? Is it asking for feedback? How do you do it? Rather professional or with a lot of emojis? And where do you lead them to, right? So all these things you can variate a lot, and I think this provides like a nice framework to actually like think about like how to advertise your product in like one very specific channel. And when we think about it in this way, in this kind of like funnel steps, then I think it's very helpful because you have a structured approach for many different things that you can try out. This was basically like the first sort of like case study. So I'm pausing here a bit and like asking if there are like some questions, some thoughts, um, or Victoria. I think there's something in the chat.
Yes, there is a question in the chat. Let me just add one point before we go to the questions, and feel free to add more questions to the chat. So I think when you start really 0 to 1 business, it becomes really messy. Um, so there are a lot of variables you can play around with. So for example, for us, Notion page in the beginning worked better than a Framer or Lovable website, and worked worse than a Word document, even though it's the same information. So basically, I think what is important is, first of all, before you do what Nils has now showed to you, you did some other validation like interviews and also online research, because otherwise you can just be discouraged very quick. And then really not just do one thing, right? So Nils gave you a lot of channels. And I think it actually makes a difference if you post on Slack versus WhatsApp versus a Discord. So the platform really also makes a difference. So really try different things and then measure conversion, because changing just one thing. So for us, for example, WhatsApp in the beginning, WhatsApp groups worked much better than Slack groups. So just changing one parameter can make a huge difference. So don't get discouraged fast, but yeah, the idea is to I would say to spend some weeks on this, and if really nothing happens, then to see what to pivot in your idea, and for this you again need to go into market research and interviews. Okay, this is my 2 cents. Let's go to questions. Do you want me to read them out loud, or you see them, Nils?
Sure. Feel free to read them out.
Okay. Um, are our storefronts moving from website to AI chat windows to meet the user where they are and serve them conversationally, then browse and navigate clicks? So should they move to AI chats versus landing pages?
Of course, right? This is like one of the many variables that we discussed, right? So this could be like, if we say, for example, in the beginning, right, that we see something like this, okay, we see no conversion, then you can say, well, you know what? I don't want to try like a landing page anymore. What do you think about like a direct chat window or like a conversational channel or something like this? So this is something you can variate with as well.
Thank you. Another question. What could be an alternative to a landing page for experimentation? What could be relevant success metrics one could measure as an alternative to conversion or signups?
Yeah, I mean, for as I said, right, for the landing page, there is a lot of different possibilities. So instead of saying a landing page is already something where you can do a lot. So this in itself is already like some sort of like an open canvas, right? So you could think of like something which is a lower investment or something like, for example, just say, hey, connect with me on LinkedIn, or for an example, connect with me via social media to have some sort of in, or for example, like a direct sign up to like some sort of newsletter, just to get any sort of signal that people indicate some interest and that you also immediately gain something from them. It could even be easier that you, for example, say like, hey, give me like some sort of like information like in a survey just to validate some of the points. So I think it's important in this situation that you sort of like combine your goal with also learning something about the user that helps you to resonate with them and further learn about them. What could be relevant success metric as an alternative to conversion or signups? So yeah, as I said, right, I would think of like lower effort related things. Like for example, it could just be like a follow on LinkedIn. It could be just something like like looking at certain things, so you don't immediately need conversions or signups. Maybe just looking into how many people actually viewed your page, which is ultimately, of course, also a conversion metric, but at least some sort of like indication that tells you that it resonates with your user what you're offering, right? That's how I would answer this. You want to add something, Victoria?
Well, I think ultimately, at some point, you would want to run an experiment to really get certain commitment from people. It might be even for a free call, so it doesn't have to be paid in the very, very beginning. It can be actually paid. So actually, the next step for sure should be some paid commitment, signing up for newsletter. So technically, I would say you you want to think of the commitment they give you, right? So if it's just like a like or something really super small, it is still something, but it doesn't show you that they're ready to invest time or money into your idea. And this is what you want to know in the beginning. Um, but as I said, like both things are good. So I think it's good to overall see conversion rate of people who click what Nils shows you, but you also want to integrate certain CTA to the landing page or to what you ask them to do. So that also maybe to track not just conversion to the landing page, but to a certain step which shows certain commitment from them. That would be also my suggestion.
And I think also like I think the beauty also comes sort of like when you compare different things, right? So imagine, for example, you have like all these different this is just like a super small subset of like thousands of different like communities you can post into. Imagine if you're, I think in a lot of products that you create or a lot of things that you want to sort of like get in front of people, it's not like super clear who's actually your audience. And like actually like one of the biggest questions, right? So for example, like one idea or like one thing that you want to figure out is this relevant for the startup and product development community or like maybe for some other community? And if you then have a way to compare this and saying you have like, I don't know, likes from different people that you can also like target and attribute to the different channels, then I think you also have like a good signal if this is something that resonates with a certain audience that you then rather focus on instead of like going broader and broader, but rather being more niche. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so feel free to ask more questions. I think this is already like more or less the last set of slides or the last sort of parts that I prepared. So I think the problem or the situation for a lot of these things are not the ideas, right? So there are tons of ideas, and probably if you now go into ChatGPT and ask like, give me 1,000 ideas on how to create like €0 experiments, right? It will probably produce a lot of them. So here are a couple of the ones that usually people recommend like in this context. So if you, for example, like post on Product Hunt, which is a common thing, list your product on free directories, or for example, you show this on Hacker News, or for example, use some Slack and Discord groups, launch on indie hackers. All these things, like they take a bit of effort, but ultimately they cost nothing, right? And once you figured out, like, or like once you have like an initial idea, it's so easy nowadays to create an initial landing page, maybe even with a sign up or something like this. I mean, maybe create an account somewhere, right? But just start to getting this in front of customers and get an initial feeling how this relates to your customer and to your audience. I think this is like a period where it was never as easy as it was like this before, right? And this is, I think, is the important message as well. For early stage experiments like this, it is, we do not have, of course, we can think about this a lot, right? There are a lot of challenges and there are a lot of things that sort of you say, hey, this is not 100% correct. I don't want to, like mix certain things up. But ultimately, it's yourself, right? It's your product and your assumption that you have about how users are interacting with your product, and you can define this signal to prove it, right? So it might just be like a sign up, it might be a reply, it might be a booking. And you also like define exactly how to test it, right? So you can use all these different interesting things. Like for example, you can just set up like a landing page. You can just think like, okay, once they send me back a message, there's already something. Or you can set up like classic things like a fake door or something like this, where you basically act as if the product is already available, but you put them on a wait list. Or, for example, you even let people already pre-order, meaning, you actually try to make them pay, right? But those are steps by steps. And like what we want to give you is also sort of like a framework to think of this in a more like, in a way that you have to learn about this, right? Learn about the different steps and also learn about the audience, because ultimately there is no one who can tell you for sure this is the way how your new product will be successful, right? It is something that you need to figure out yourself. And the interesting thing, or like an interesting point in general, is also that I think ultimately it is a lot also about motivation, right? So if someone tells you, well, you need to do this, or this is when product market fit is achieved, or something like this, might be good, but it also needs to feel good for yourself, right? So this is why I also want to emphasize that often it is important that you define the success and that you are happy with the success as well. And to stick with this decision rule and also think about like working together, like in accountability groups, run certain things, learn from them, and also iterate based on them. So this is the key message, and I think there is like one more question. Uh, Are there any parts of building or growing a product that are not learnable by experiments? If yes, what are some examples we can be aware of? I mean, so I would say like I mean, what are things that you cannot learn? So I generally would say I have a growth mindset. So I think you can learn most of the things, right? And I would also not like underestimate the sort of like bias to action that we sort of try to also promote here a bit, right? As I said, right, all of these things they make, those are like things that you can do so fast and you can do so easily and they cost you nothing. And imagine, for example, you have an initial product that you're convinced of, and then you go through all of these different things, maybe in 2 weeks already, and you get no signal, or you realize, well, actually, it's not my thing because I don't know, it doesn't resonate with the audience, or it doesn't resonate with like what I actually expected, or something like this. And then you realize for yourself this is not really the right thing. And then you just jump to another product and you do the same thing. And then maybe there it resonates. And I think this sort of like learning mindset as well, to get like different signals, like from this process, doing this again and again, you will get faster in doing all this. And you also will develop a better sense and understanding, like what actually resonates with your audience and what not. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it very much depends what we call experiments. For me, everything you do without being 100% sure that it will work is experiment. And for me, it sounds like everything you do, especially as a business owner or even as a person, you're not always sure like what will be the result, right? So this is an experiment. Interview is an experiment. Trying to launch a product is experiment. Um, Basically, everything product management, every deployment of new features is an experiment, right? So yeah, basically life is an experiment somehow. So, and I think what also Nils said, I just want to highlight it again. No business or product will be able to grow or to actually for you to know if it is the one without running hundreds of experiments. So there is no other way. So all the people who are overthinking, trying to imagine the best idea ever, talking to their friends and family and so on, trying to see, okay, how to do it and what to do with it if it's the one, this just doesn't work. So any idea starts with a direction, and then with hundreds of experiments you run to get to something which actually has enough audience. This audience has willingness to pay. Very important that you actually can get money for this. That you like doing it, that it's feasible to do it, and so there's so many ways, things to check, and the only ways to check them is by doing experiments.
Yeah. And as again, right, like I also would not underestimate like going through the entire process of like sort of like building a product and also then realizing like how important like all the other steps are. Like for example, when I sort of like built my first course or like when I sort of like wrote my first book and published it, I realized like, wow, this is like the majority of the work, like it's done and you're like happy. But then you realize if you do nothing with this, right, then it's, like who will care about this? You need to find a unique way to sort of like and get this also in front of your audience, right? And in my opinion, I mean, this is also like going into the direction of like building an audience, but like in my opinion, this is also like an important part of it to just make sure that you have your unique audience that you already know, that you have like a unique advantage because you just sit on a lot of people that follow you, that already know you, that also maybe trust you to some extent, and to get their opinion there. Yeah.
Any questions, guys, to any experiments or how to start, how to check different parts, willingness to pay, anything you are curious about?
Everyone is already in Christmas
Mm.
mode.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi. What's the best way to keep track of your experiments? Because I guess if you're running them in parallel, it could be confusing to say, okay, the results came from this experiment, etc. Or is it best to do one first and then the other to, like to see the changes? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I think Victoria, we also discussed this. I think this is like a common problem, right? I think to some extent you can track it. You can find some ways to track it. So, for example, if you think about like the Slack community situation, right? There, you could, for example, variate the messages, or you can make sure that you actually see who signed up and compare it to the people who basically interacted with your post and the ones that you DM'd. But of course, it will be messy, right? So you will not get 100% accuracy. That is for sure. But I think like our point is also that I would not say then I have to basically do them step by step. I still have to, you can still do this in parallel. And like I think if you continue this process a lot more, then at some point you will feel and you will see what is actually like helping you to get more users. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question in a more corporate context
Mhm.
because I'm at the moment working on an actual strategy, and I'm wondering, like, what's the right point to do or run experimentation? So my thought was that when I have done my market research, understand the business, let's say dynamics, understand the user's problems, that I can create some hypothesis around and then run the experimentation to evaluate them. But what would be your take on that?
Yeah, so when you say in a corporate context, so really like in a product management environment? Okay. So I think that's sort of like the art and science of a product manager, right? Because you ultimately need to decide um, on your method fit. So ultimately, the first sort of step is, as Victoria also said, is doing market research or doing interviews. But things like this, in my opinion, or like in my broad definition, is also already part of the experimentation process, right? So if you think of a new product and like you connect with someone and try to figure out like, does this resonate with them or not? This is already part of the experimentation process because you try to figure something out that you don't know if it will be successful or not, right? And like, of course, then you have a lot of like additional methods, which I would also call experimentation. So you can, for example, then follow up with a survey. You can sort of like try to get into concrete user testing, depending on the specific challenge that you identify. But this is again sort of like the sort of like way where you need to define your own rules in your context, then probably also together with some other stakeholders, right? But this is exactly the sort of like art and science that I see in like the 0 to 1 product development. Yeah. And also like one point, like I mean, I wrote a book about product market fit, right? So in this context, people will often mention product market fit, of course, but also like what I always say, like product market fit is a concept that was invented by venture capital companies, right? So ultimately, this is also their way to express there is something, right? But initially, when they created this term, they did not really define this. So afterwards, we came across and basically said, "Oh yeah, you need to do this to define this." And there are also like different opinions on how you can actually make sense of it. So this, in my opinion, is like another sign that you actually say, it depends a bit on sort of the rules that you set yourself, right? Yeah. So it might be, for example, also something like collecting, I don't know, 10 recorded call messages from people that say your product is beautiful.
So there is another question in the chat. What tools do you use to track and interpret signals?
Yeah, this depends a lot, of course. So I would go with in this direction into a very basic way. So if you, for example, think of like these Slack communities or this way that you put something into like one Slack community, I would simply create like some form of spreadsheet, say like what you exactly did, how many people converted, and this is your initial tool to track this, right? Of course, there are a lot of more sophisticated ways, but also here, the general message would be to just get started, try this out, and make sure that you sort of like track what you did and what happened in this time of the week, right? So that you understand how your efforts are related to the exact outcomes. And you will not get like 100% accuracy in the signals, right? But it will give you a better idea and it will make you faster in the future if you do this again.
So I have also a question. By the way, guys, if you have a business idea, side business idea, and you want to discuss it with me in a free call, I dropped a link to a call in the chat. And this is my question to you, Nils. So me and Nils, we prepared for this webinar, and he told me like, I talking to people, they tell me, oh, it's such a great idea, Nils. Why don't you just do this idea, right? And he's like, yeah, like idea costs nothing, right? It's all about doing and experimenting and so on. And yeah, he can do only what he can do time wise. So, but Nils, if you would now start a new business idea, what would be your first steps?
Yeah, I think I approach most of the things that I want to achieve in the similar way nowadays, namely like a product manager, right? So for example, I just give you like a very concrete example, right? Like I had this idea I think like 2024, so like around like 1 year ago, I really wanted to, like go to different conferences and get speaking engagements and things like this, right? So the very first step that you do in this context is that you reach out to people who are currently doing this, right? And like I did this with like, I don't know, 5 to 10 different people and basically asked them, so what would you recommend? Like, how can I actually like be invited to these conferences, right? And then they will tell you a lot of things. So some people will tell you, I don't know, write a book or like connect with certain people or build a LinkedIn audience. And they will give you a lot of ideas, or they will tell you maybe even more people that you should connect with. And this is like the initial start. On how you basically get a first idea, like what you could do in this context. And these people are already where you want to be, right? So you can learn a lot from them and you can see basically like how they did this. And this is how I would approach most of the things. Like, for example, I don't know, like if you want to, for example, also like if you want to try something out, if you want to try launching on Product Hunt, talk to a few folks that did it recently, ask them how they did it, what performed well, what was not so good. And this is also a good way, in my opinion, to learn how to do proper interviews, to get really valuable insights from people, because this is something that will help you all over in your career. And also, it's this sort of like fear of reaching out to people and ask them for something. This is usually people, I mean, what is the worst thing that people can say? They can say no, right? Which is not a problem, which is fine. But most of the people are super up talking about things that they're doing, right? So, and this is how I would approach it. And once I have a few like good ideas that also resonate with me and it makes sense to me, then I would start trying the first thing out. If you say, well, I believe in this audience building on LinkedIn, I continue to build the audience on LinkedIn, right? And ultimately, like, I mean, I don't want to like sort of like show off, right? But like for me, this really worked really well because like a lot of people told me if you build this audience up on LinkedIn about one specific niche or one specific topic, then people will recognize you. You need to maybe talk with them a bit. And then ultimately, of course, you will also be invited to conferences and will get speaking engagements and things like this, right? So yeah, this is how I would approach it.
Thank you. Are there any more questions?
Just one question from my side. Considering all these answers and so on, what is maybe the right time or right signal which simply says that your idea won't be successful? Because sometimes you can use whatever the tools or tests, yeah, to get the feedback. Sometimes you cannot be sure if you used everything. You cannot be sure that you, I don't know, invested enough time in that, but simply stop, give up, and refocus your attention to a completely different, I don't know, product idea. If there is something like a healthy signal to say, stop, enough.
That's the tricky part, right? So I can tell you really that, so I can also tell you like one interesting story, sort of like in the opposite direction, right? So I worked at
Mm-hmm.
like a very early stage startup. And like we were really, following all these sort of like product market fit rules that, 40% of the people would say they miss your product if it's gone and so forth. And like we
Mm-hmm.
did all of this, right? And then we sort of like went in front of the investor and pitched it to them. And they were like, yeah, but I mean, we don't believe in it, right? So it's also, it's not like there is no sort of like this general rule that exists. It is, in my opinion, a combination between signals that you set for yourself, that you say,
Mm-hmm.
I believe I can further invest my time, so to speak, in this product if I get the following back from my audience. And also, it is a bit about like your motivation, right? If you
Yeah.
really believe in something of your product and you get some signals, you make sense of these signals and you continue, right? But there is no clear signal that you can get objectively that tells you this fails or this will be successful. What I, however, like would generally recommend is like to find sort of like an accountability group, right? So where you hold yourself accountable, where you also like discuss the things that happen to you to get like a
Mhm.
second pair of eyes or another opinion, and like to get a bit of distance also from your product. You know?
Okay, thanks.
There is another question in the chat.
What if your product idea is related to a product which sells data and the outcome the user seek is about data freshness and accuracy? How would you approach testing? Only design mockup or talking might not be enough. Why might it not be enough? So is this like a concrete business idea that you have, Giuseppe?
Yeah, actually, is in development. um, and what I'm noticing when I do, okay, when I did user interviews, sometime I was doing at the end of the user interview a mini demo on the product with bugs, of course, or with the design. And it was a way to understand and validate a little bit also with the body language to see how much they were understanding, how much they were agreeing. However, I think I need to go to the next level and showing also, proper data, like not proper data, like better data, because when you work with 20 APIs with, and you are small, you don't have a data engineering team, so you might do mistakes. So how to test if this data, like let's say these data are accurate or fresh, like are good, if are, appreciated, or if are needed, if are useful. Because on the design, when you show just the design or just a product that returns maybe dummy data, is different than when it shows real data.
Mhm.
So I've been thinking how this testing could be done, and that's why I'm like want to get an idea from you, like if you have some opinion. Actually, there is something that I've noticed. Some companies do like these super ultra sales led companies, like that they do a report to you. So you tell them what you need, then they do a report to check, if this report is matching with what you need. This could be a way, but it's also expensive to do. Like it's can be maybe tough to do in the beginning. But apart from that, like, is there some idea that or suggestion that do you have? I hope I'm clear in what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think I get it. Like, so it's a lot about it's very difficult to create a prototype or to show off the product, right? So maybe you can think about like how exactly you could provide value for these users, like in a very like specific situation, right? Maybe there's a certain domain or a certain common use case that you can find, and to create like some more dedicated value for them. That would be one option in the direction of like how you can change the product itself that you're showing off. But also like if it's about signals, right? If you want to get a stronger signal, then you can maybe like go also like into the next step and get like a more concrete commitment, or for example, tell them, hey, like you have to pay something even like to be registered, or like already sign up for it or get an early discount or something like this. So this are sort of like the two main variables that I see to either think like
Okay.
how you can provide more value with the product that you're showing off, maybe for one specific group only, so narrow down the audience. And second, get a stronger signal by creating like a higher friction sort of buy-in. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. No, makes sense. The registration and like making them become users probably is the easiest easiest thing to do. Definitely.
That
Thanks.
sounds super interesting. Thanks a lot for sharing this.
Thanks to you.
Okay, if there is no more questions left, Nils, do you want to say a couple of words about our program and why did you decide to join us as a mentor?
Of course. So feel free for sure to check out the program. It's called 12 Brave, sorry. And this is a wonderful course and a wonderful project where we basically discussing in a lot more detail what we discussed here, right? So we have several sessions about like personal branding, one which goes in in a lot more detail also into experimentation, but also related to other things that you need to start your business, related to legal things. And I think like what I really also like emphasize all the time is the aspect of having like an accountability group or like a group that you can exchange about your success, right? Because you will have like a cohort-based group, and basically you will be together with these people and discuss your ideas and like share your learnings, share your failures, share your successes. And like together you usually make sense of this. So settings like this are really awesome. And yeah, I invite you for sure. It's also super nice to talk to Victoria and like in an initial call to discuss some of these ideas that you already have or that you maybe want to create during the course. Yeah, can only recommend to join there. And I will be a mentor, and I'm a mentor there because like for me, it's also. I'm not like super far away, right? It's not like I created like I have like 100,000 followers and like best-selling books and things like this. But I did a few things. Like I learned a few things about how to create products, also like how to get in front of people, how to build an audience. And I think because I'm only a few steps away, that helps me to better like resonate with like the initial steps. So and I think a lot of the things that we do, like in entrepreneurship and in early stage product development, are a lot about, exchanging thoughts and like trying things out and holding ourselves accountable. So this is why I joined, and this is why I really like to, teach there and be a mentor there. And yeah, it's a really awesome group. We usually have a lot of fun in the different sessions. So feel free to join or have a look at least.
Thank you, Nils. Okay, guys, actually we are closing. So we are close to the end of the session. And if you don't have any questions, thank you again for joining. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Hopefully see you next year. And thanks again.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much, everyone.
Happy
Thank you
holidays.
very much.
Good evening.